is how I'm choosing to do my cartographer's note to wrap up my project and just explain why I executed it the way that I did and why I chose to incorporate the ideas from class that I chose to incorporate. So I really wanted to break down this idea of homelessness in Spokane into three major areas of focus, and my first focus that was really important to me that I touched on in this project was the cycle of homelessness and why homelessness is something that is so persistent in our country, and not even just what causes homelessness, people being evicted, domestic violence, drug abuse, not even just those very simple ways that or things that we can blame homelessness on, but I really wanted to dig deep on the history of what has laid the foundation and allowed homelessness to thrive in our country, because in a lot of really urban areas such as Seattle, a smaller urban area like Spokane, that's exactly what homelessness is doing, is it's thriving because it's being perpetuated by a system that has been working against them from day one. So it was really important to me that I did the research on the history and where this all started, why we even have the homelessness that we do today, because it's not just because someone was evicted, it's not because of those things that we blame it on, it's because of a system, it's because of a cycle, it is because this country has been built to fail homeless people. Over time, it has turned into a nation that is fixated on failing homeless people and perpetuating this idea that these people are just simply not working hard enough. And we need to get rid of that mentality that it's about work ethic or it's about drive or it's about ambition, because that's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. It's about systematic injustice, it's about economic equality, it's about racism, it's about so much more than just this person was evicted from their apartment because they couldn't pay rent because they weren't working hard enough. It's about so much more than that. And I wanted to make that very abundantly clear in the beginning of my project, because I didn't want anyone opening up this project and with that misconception of this is why someone becomes homeless. I did not want anyone to begin my paper and not take my project seriously because of that misconception. And it's really nobody's fault if they do have that misconception, because that is what we are told. That is what even I used to believe, but it's very clear how untrue that is, even if you just start to do the slightest bit of research. And so that was very important to me, that was my first chunk. And then my second was I really wanted to take a dive into what is Spokane doing to aid its homeless population, because that is something that even I really don't know about. And that is where I start to kind of include my maps. And the maps that I found were a map of the resources that is intended to be used by those who are experiencing homelessness, and also a map that is more so a chart, but it does still have that flow in the sense where it's a guide to how Spokane brings people from homelessness to permanent housing. And that's when I really started to talk about the ideas that we've been talking about in class. I touched on the idea from Propin of critical cartography and just about power relations in maps and the power that we see in maps and socioeconomic statuses. I really talked about that, especially with the map of showing resources, because in my opinion, I feel that not only having those resources, but taking that extra step to show these people these are where those resources are, that works to break down that hierarchy, that barrier, because you want these people to succeed in a world where they are not supposed to succeed. We are not doing much as a country to help these people succeed. And so to not only have the resources for them, but then to make a map for them and say, these are where they are, come find us. I think that that is huge in kind of breaking down that barrier of that hierarchy of the socioeconomic, the power, the power relation. So I talked a lot about that. I also touched on the idea of Barton and Barton and the rules of inclusion, because I felt that one of the maps that the city of Spokane provided was oversimplified and did not speak to the challenges that can be faced and are oftentimes faced during the process of trying to establish temporary or permanent housing. I felt that the message that it communicated was one that did not do much for those social illusions that we hold about homeless people, those stigmas. And so that's when I also talked about Harley in deconstructing the map. And I talked about how it is important to do what I did to deconstruct the map and say, look, this is what this map is saying to me by you simplifying homelessness and only including, like what Barton and Barton said, the positive and the desirable and what looks good and pretty and easy to put on one piece of paper. By only including that and simplifying it, to deconstruct that, we can see that the message is that getting out of homelessness is easy, which only further perpetuates that idea that the homeless person is the reason that they're there. And if they wanted to get out of homelessness, they could do it tomorrow. And so I really talked about that and how even though they do have really great resources and great maps on their website, I think that oversimplifying a little map of how to get from A to B in terms of being homeless to becoming someone who has permanent housing, you cannot just put that on one piece of paper and say, this is it, this is what you have to do, because it is so much more than that. And by saying that, even that it was unintended for it to mean that, to say that it's this easy furthers that idea that homelessness is not something that needs our attention, it's not something that needs social reform, and it 100% does. And then I wrap it up by just kind of analyzing and answering the question of, okay, well, is Spokane doing anything? Is it helping? Is it working? And this part was kind of difficult because, yes, Spokane is doing something in the sense that there are obviously people who have achieved permanent housing because of Spokane's resources, but the numbers are so hard to grasp. The numbers are just not there because we have one source saying that there's 1,000 homeless people in Spokane. And then we have another source saying that, well, by our definition of what makes you homeless, there's 11,000 homeless people in Spokane. And then we have the city of Spokane saying, well, we've moved this many people into permanent housing, but you'll have to read it and see what I'm talking about. But the numbers just don't line up. And obviously that is because of two factors. It's because you cannot track homeless people, and you especially can't track them if the definition of what makes you homeless is not consistent. For example, a lot of the totals of homeless people don't include people who are sleeping in their cars. Those people get they slip through the cracks and they don't become a part of that number. And so I think it's just safe to say that it's to assume that there's probably a lot more than we're aware of, and I talk about that as well in my project, but I also think that it's safe to say that Spokane has a very clear-cut plan for what they're doing, and I kind of ended just on the note that, if they can even provide permanent housing for a handful of people, that to me is a success, because to say that the worth of a project like that only depends on how many people it's helped kind of devalues the worth of just one singular person, if that makes any sense. I think that no matter what, as long as there's a step in the right direction, we can consider that a success, but it definitely is hard when you don't have those numbers to go off of and say, well, we've gone from this number to this number, and we can see a very good decline in homeless people in downtown Spokane. So it was a lot of information, definitely, to try and analyze, but I am very happy with how I went about it, especially in terms of the maps and